Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of collaborations, looking at a band that I've become quite familiar with in recent weeks, The Ocean. We're going to be looking at a song called Devonian Nascent that features Jonas from Catatonia. So let's dive into this and see what's going on. We got an 11-minute track ahead of us. Probably some post metal, I believe, is what Ocean mostly works within. Let's hit it. Let's see what's going on. Alright, so we're in 4/4 with emphasis on 1 and 4. Which gives it gives the latter half of each bar. Well, I guess it should be. It gives the second bar a feeling of extra length. The second half of the phrasing. Yeah, really beautiful though. I mean, Ocean is good at layering, but I think this is a strong showcase when we remove all the fuzz and distortion, what that layering actually sounds like. We got those eighth notes that come in before beat 1. Yeah, beat 1 and beat 3. Yeah, so that second bar is filled with those sort of anticipatory eighth notes. I love the little hi-hat playfulness as well. And this sort of takes that same idea that we saw earlier in an 8-bar phrase, emphasizing beats 1 and 4, but we also emphasize 7. So we have like a 3-3-2 idea going on, whereas before it was 3-5. The syncopation on that. I'm loving the hi-hat work everywhere so far. And we're still incorporating the anticipatory eighth notes in that second bar. Yeah, we got some layering there in the vocals. And we've also shifted to a more rigid feel, emphasizing the third beat of every bar. But the layering is still present. And that haunting wailing in the background, I'm loving that. That is a nice little touch. Really cool just hearing the diversity in this group. This is so far divorced from what we started with. What? So we have like an electronic bass sound here, but we also have an emphasis on the offbeat in the hi-hat, which is entirely new. We've brought back the emphasized 3, but that bounciness in the hi-hat is very interesting. And there's the anticipatory eighth notes again. Which is really cool because it's tying the downbeat driven ideas in the rock aspect with the offbeat ideas that we had in the last section. This is just driving like a machine, just... Ooh! Got some wall of sound stuff going on here. Every instrument's come together to do this single idea. This eighth note chugging. Interestingly, we have the constant eighth notes in the guitars, but the drum has shifted back to the 3-3-2, which creates some really interesting clashing in emphasized beats. the placement of one of those harmonized vocals on the right side, but sort of like lower down, a little quieter too. Very interesting. Yeah, I really like that moment there at the end where we have the two guitars doing tremolo picking over the groovy kind of drumming and bass work. I think both the texture of the tremolo picking there and just the rhythmic difference, I think work very well against what the drum and the bass were presenting. Very cool. All right, first I want to start with the way that they play around with time because I think this is very important. Um, the entire song is in 4/4. I don't think there's too many tempo shifts. If they are, they're subtle, right? We're talking, 3 to 5 beats per minute, just to subtly shift the feeling of a section. But I didn't feel any specific tempo changes. So, like I said, I kind of think that we don't have any in here. Um, the whole song's in 4/4 though, but they adjust the vibe of each of the sections by how they subdivide that 4/4. Now there's a few ways you can do this, especially when you start looking at larger ideas, not just 4 beats in the bar, but what about 8 beats across 2 bars or 16 beats across 4 bars? And that's where we start to see some interesting ideas popping up here. So in a lot of these places, I was talking about 3 versus 5 or 3-3-2. These are very common ideas to pop up, and both of those add up to 8. So we're looking at 8 beats, and when you have 4 beats per bar, 8 beats is going to be 2 bars. So these are 2 bar phrases where we can analyze the rhythmic element. And at the beginning, we had a 3-5, and that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you can feel it right there where you have these quick back-to-back pulses at the beginning, and then the latter half of that phrase feels like it's taking forever. At least to me, because of the 3 that we start with, it really makes my brain, my body, my ears want to stop at 6 and go back to 1 after that. So we get the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, which is a waltz. And that's sort of what they allude to, emphasizing beats 1 and beats 4. It really is sort of this extending of the bar when we add that 7th and 8th beat to there with no accented beats. So it has this elongated feeling. So we have a rush at the beginning, and then it feels like we're dragging, and then a rush and we're dragging. We alternate on this. And that to me is it's so important to the beginning of this song because it sets us up to feel a lot of this track as going to be unbalanced and also this element of dragging, right? For the first, minute and a half, 2 minutes of the song, it feels like we're constantly, dragging, trying to motivate the song to move on, and it just doesn't. Every time we get a notion of motivation, a notion of momentum. We get that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it feels like we drag out. Or like we had it going. Why'd you stop? And then you hear the 1 and the 4 again. You're like, okay, we got this, and then we drag out to the 8 again. And it's this idea of like trying to get the momentum to go. Like there's direction for sure. We just can't get the song to actually go. It keeps starting and stopping. And that's an element that I'm going to be looking for when we dive into the lyrics, is anything that might revolve around that notion of sort of dragging or lacking motivation or procrastination or anything like that. I don't know what the words Devonian or Nascent are, so I've got nothing to go on there. Interestingly, I'm also, this complete side note here. Jonas also was featured on one of the songs from the Jurassic Cretaceous album, it looks like. Maybe the song is Jurassic from the Cretaceous album. I don't know. I don't know how to read these guys' stuff. But yeah, this is not the only time Jonas has been featured on the Ocean track. Anyways, though, what's interesting is after we get out of this introductory section and we move into the first part where there's vocals, we subdivide the 5 into a 3 and a 2. So we get another section of imbalance in there. We actually have imbalance within our imbalance. But what it does, interestingly, is removes the unwillingness to move and almost presents a feeling of tripping, of jump starting, of moving into the next bar when we don't expect it. So on a 2-bar phrase, we would now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, and you get that lurch there. That 7, 8, you have 2 groups of 3, at least to me. Again, I'm expecting another group of 3, and to get that 7, 8, and then immediately hit another accented beat. Something I talk about a lot with 4/4 is that it's symmetrical, right? So whether you want to subdivide it into 1s or 2s or 4s, you're going to have, a very equal symmetric feeling to the bar. But as showcased right here, we can extend it out to an 8-beat phrase and break it up into something that does not divide so evenly and take something that should feel rather stable and end up making it feel very disjointed. We've moved from feeling lethargic to almost feeling rushed. And I think that's really cool. Like, I mean, we could accomplish these same ideas in by changing up the time signature. If we moved from 4/4 to 7/4, we could get the same idea of feeling like we're lurching every other bar. When we were in the 3 and then the 5 idea, we could get that same idea of feeling like we're overstaying our welcome by moving to 9/4. And having just a little bit of extra oomph at the end at the end of a phrase when you think you should be moving on already. And instead they chose to stick with 4/4 and to utilize different subdivisions to achieve the same effects. And I think that's very cool. We talk a lot about time signature here. I think time signature is awesome. I think odd time signatures are awesome. I love listening to music where it's a puzzle and I'm like, what time signature are we in? Really trying to hone it in. To me, it's very fun, I should say, to try to pick apart and figure out what time signature somebody is playing in. But there's also this other side of the equation of really pushing what 4/4 is, or what 4/4 can do, or 3/4 or 6/8, any of the more standard ones that kind of pop up in a lot of music, really pushing them outside of their standard bounds. And I'm not going to say that the 3/5 or the 3/3/2 is unusual, but it's definitely less common than something like 4 on the floor or every other beat that'll give us this real nice synonymous rhythm. Not synonymous, symmetrical rhythm. So yeah, that's really interesting. And then even, we go further into the song and we do hit more standard ideas. We hit 4/4 with an emphasis only on 3s. So we get a little bit of this it's not the backbeat because that's 2 and 4, but it's not really the front of the bar either because we're not hitting the 1. So it feels a little disjointed, but it still gives us that center. Every bar we're getting 1 beat of accent, which creates the symmetry. And then later on we move into some ideas of constant eighth notes, and I don't think there's really any accented beats. Maybe they return to that accented third beat, but the idea is that we are having this constant rigid eighth note attack, right? Every half of a beat, we're getting a note rather than any sort of syncopation to it. So we're getting more rigid ideas here where it's stabilized, it's symmetrical. So they do introduce that, and it provides great contrast to some of these more disjointed subdivisions that they have earlier in the track. I also think it's interesting, and I'm going to dive into this maybe with the lyrics, and well, maybe on a second listen, because I don't always know where the lyrics come in, what sections of the song. But anyways, I did notice that some of the more interesting subdivisions show up in the chiller parts of the song, and when we hit some of the heavier distorted guitar sections, we do move into more of the more strict, rigid time signatures or subdivisions. So there is this separation. When we're chill and relaxed, we have odd subdivisions, and when we're aggressive and overbearing, we have standard subdivisions. And I don't quite know what any of that means, but it is a pattern that I saw throughout here. Um, so layering, right? So, in the past, I've talked about the ocean being a fantastic group at slow burns, at layering, at really building atmospheres. And I think at the beginning of this track, we got a strong showcase of some of their layering ability that can be very cleanly heard. A lot of the ocean stuff, at least that I've been presented with, is heavier music, distorted guitars, loud drums, screaming. And they kind of go for that wall of sound effect where everything kind of comes together into a singular sound, and it's really difficult to pick out each individual aspect. You really just get the entire song blasted at you at once. And it works phenomenally for what they're aiming for, but it is terrible for being able to pick it apart and see the individual aspects and how that moment of the song is crafted. And I think it's really cool that we can see this track right here that starts out with strings. There's some violin. There's was there a piano? We had acoustic guitars. We had the bass, the drummer. We had the clean vocals. Like just a lot of acoustic, clean elements here with very distinct production. Everything was placed in a specific spot of the sound sphere. Different instruments had different types of production, emphasized different bands. Just very distinct and clear production of all the voices that were at play. And it's very cool that I could listen to how they deal with counterpoint, how they implement varying rhythmic ideas, how they go about layering things. What is textural? What is melodic? What is harmonic? What is chordal? How they layer out this song. Because, like I've mentioned, I kind of get glimpses of it here and there, but a lot of their stuff is wall of sound. It's sort of the singular identity. So, this is something that I would love to hear more of in the ocean, not just because I do enjoy it greatly. It was a gorgeous opening to the song, the first 5 minutes or so, but also because it allows me to kind of get a moment to peer into the minds of these people and see how they tick, what kind of ideas go into their music creation. And so through this process, we get to hear how they deal with counterpoint. We have the vocalist laying down a melody. We also have a violin in the left ear providing a counterpoint to that counter melody. Basically, counterpoint is just another melody line that's playing against another melody line. We have the vocal, like if you took the vocals out, the violin would have the spotlight. If you took the violin out, the vocals have the spotlight, but they coexist here, both to support and kind of play against what each other are doing. They exist on their own, but they also exist in tandem, and the melody that they create together is its own idea. So that's very cool. We have beautiful vocal harmonies all throughout. The guitar harmonizes with the vocals once or twice. But also, interestingly, here is we can look at the rhythmic component to all of this as well. The drums provide some really interesting ideas, especially when you look at the hi-hat. I think the snare really isn't doing much. They're laying down the emphasis on the 1, the 4, and the 7, because I think we were in the 3-3-2 section here. Um, so they're laying down the accented beats that provide the subdivision in the phrasing. But also we're looking at a 4-bar phrase here, right? That's where our repetition is. We have a 4-bar idea, and when we get to the end of the 4th bar, we loop back to the first. And what's interesting is that each bar kind of has its own vibe. Like a lot of it is that 3-3-2. However, the second one has this anticipatory feel where we get 2/8 notes back to back, but instead of being the downbeat and then the subsequent offbeat, it's the offbeat before the downbeat. So it feels like we're lurching into it, like we're playing just a hair early. And it's not emphasizing the same idea or the same beats that we were emphasizing earlier when we're doing the 3-3-2 idea. Instead, this goes to more of a rigid concept of 1 and 3 and then 1 of the next bar. So they're equidistant apart. They're every 2 beats. But it feels odd because, one, our body's already used to the 3-3-2, but also because we have this lurching idea where these concepts, these 2/8 note hits, do not start on the downbeat. They start just before it. It feels early. So we have two disorienting elements in here that, while they should, or while the idea of 2/8 notes focused on every other downbeat should feel really centering and symmetrical and feel natural, they actually feel completely out of place against everything else that's going on. It's very cool. And of course, the second time we come around to this verse section, the drums are completely opening up. I don't know if there's improv going on here or if it is completely, pre-composed, but there are some really interesting fills that happen like every other bar. First of all, the hi-hat is used a lot. In the first verse, it's very tasteful. It's used sparingly to provide some ornamental ideas, but in the second verse, the hi-hat is basically used all the time, constant eighth notes, playing around with different types of syncopation regarding accented beats or when the hi-hat is open versus closed. There's a lot of technical aspects going on with it, and we can hear this technicality extend to other parts of the drum kit as well. If I remember right, The Ocean is a band with 2 drummers, and I did not think about that while we were listening, but I wonder how, like, I'm trying to think of, like, because now, I'm thinking about it. The hi-hat in the second verse was definitely a two-handed idea. And I've seen some drummers with some ridiculous speed hit, drums in, 16th notes, like finding little 16th note pockets to pull away and get like a sharp crack in the snare before heading back to some cymbals or whatever. So I'm not going to say it's not humanly possible to play this with one drum kit, but thinking back on it, some of this stuff in that second verse would be a lot easier with 2 drum kits. Because it was some complex rhythmic stuff. It really was. And I'm trying to remember if there was any moment where I was like, wait a second, that would require 3 hands. And I can't think of anything specific. So again, I'm not sure, and I'm only like 60% sure that The Ocean's the band with the 2 drummers, so I could be off on that. But I think it speaks at least to the complexity of, especially that second verse. Now, we have all this rhythmic layering going on under the drums, but then you can also hear what the other instruments are doing, what the vocals are doing, what notes they're emphasizing, how their phrasing works. And you can start to hear this sort of like ping pong effect where the drums will accent one beat and then the violin will start their phrase on the next beat. So that's sort of, it's not really an accented note, but you can feel an element of putting focus on that beat because an idea has started there, right? We had resting before that. This beat is now significant because we have brought a new instrument in. And you can sort of hear this idea ping-ponging around as different instruments do different things rhythmically, or they come out of rests. And it's just very cool because we not only have this layering spatially, like I said, excellent use of the sound sphere. We also have it melodically with counterpoint. We have it rhythmically with all these instruments. Like there's so many little bits of layering going on here, and it is gorgeous. I really love this moment. I don't care if zero other The Ocean songs ever do anything like this. Having this moment to hear them do this just reminds me that even when they're doing their wall of sound stuff, which we see later in this track, and I can't pinpoint everything that's happening, I know that under the surface, if we removed all that fuzz and the compression and, widened out the production, that it would be extremely beautiful. Like there'd be some really great ideas under there. And that they're purposefully removing the ability to hear everything individually because the sum of the parts is more important than each individual section. Like they're going for a specific sound. And, at least to me, I like knowing that there's some real interesting things going on in any section of a song, even if I can't necessarily hear it. So yeah, the layering is just phenomenal. It gave me a brand new appreciation for this group because, like I said, I've never really had a chance to hear everything. Like I can see it in concerts. When we've checked out some live stuff from them, I can see all the instruments. I know there's a lot going on. I've just never really been able to hear it. Now, this idea also kind of extends into the opposite side of the spectrum. The beginning of this song is very wide. Production-wise, there's panning all around. Every instrument kind of has its space. Everything is, everything can be heard by themselves. But the song also progresses in the other way as the song goes on, and about the 7-8 minute mark, we enter into one of the first wall of sound sections. And it's real interesting because I know how many instruments are present. I can't hear them anymore because instead of having a variety of things going on, every instrument is playing the same rhythm. The guitars and the bass are playing the same notes. Octaves apart, of course, but they're playing the same notes. They're moving the same way. And everything comes together where before it was this multifaceted machine with so many moving parts. Now it feels like a singular goal, a singular device. Man, that analogy just crumbled. Uh, Anyways, I think I get the point across where you could see all the moving parts prior, and now everything just looks like a single identity. It's just a single concept, a single cog is what it feels like. It's what it sounds like to me. And I mentioned that it was real interesting just being able to hear and see the diversity in this group, how they can go from one side to the other side, but also on the other side of that coin, I kind of don't feel like they are two opposite things. Like I mentioned, a lot of what they do is layering. And what I could describe this as, rather than chordal or atmospheric or melodic or rhythmic layering, is textural layering, giving a bunch of different textures and timbres the same idea so that we can layer up their sounds, their properties, their qualities to create something new. This is what the wall of sound is all about, at least in this context. Bringing a bunch of instruments together into a unified, amorphous sound. And that's really what it is. It's textural layering, which again, I think just goes to prove that the Ocean are masters of the layer. They can utilize it in any aspect. In fact, I'm pretty sure the Ocean has done polyrhythmic stuff before, which means that they're also uh, meter. They can layer meters. So yeah, I think that this group, their mastery over layers in general is just phenomenal. It's what I associate with them the most. And this song, other than not having polyrhythms in it, I think is a master class at showcasing all of the different ways that you can layer ideas, um, in all the facets of compositional layering, and make it still feel cohesive from start to finish. I think the last thing I want to talk on right here is, oh no, we already talked about that, didn't we? Contrast. I mean, we didn't necessarily focus on contrast, but I did talk about it in each of these sections, contrasting the wide production versus the narrow wall of sound production, contrasting the unique subdivisions versus the rigid subdivisions, contrasting the light versus the heavy. Yeah, let's get into the lyrics then, because I do want to see how all of this contrast fits in and what's going on. I think I'm also going to look up the definitions for these two words in the title, try to fit that into things. Yeah, give me a moment. I'll be right back. We'll check into that. Now, we just checked out Pelagial during album review a couple weeks back, and that was a concept album that sort of used a metaphorical layering to show, man, layer, even lyrical themes get layers in the ocean. Um, it portrayed diving into one's mind as, metaphorically as diving into the ocean and going from the surface down to the bottom, and exploring the depths of the ocean as being analogous to exploring the depths of one's mind, both being places that are sort of uncharted. Psychology is there's still a lot of stuff we don't understand about the human brain, and I don't know how far down we've gone into the ocean, but I know that there's a point where the water pressure becomes too much, and I don't know if we've explored those depths yet. I know we have information about them, but I don't know, how much information we have. So I think it's an interesting analogy. But what I'm getting at here is that each song really worked within the context of the other. If you want to check that album reaction out, the link's up there. It's like 2 hours long. It's very in depth. Um, but I'm thinking back on it, and I'm like, if I had been thrust into the middle of this, say for instance, someone gave me track 5, would I understand what's going on? Doubtful, I think is my answer. And that's where I'm sitting right here. So Devonian is a phrase that is used to speak about the largest aspect of the Paleozoic period of Earth. And it too is even split up into the late, the mid, and the early eras of the Devonian aspect of the Paleozoic era. So, it's basically this, constant subdivision of time, being able to break down discussions of periods of the earth. And nascent simply means to come into existence. So, my guess right here would be no idea. On the surface, it's about some sort of life form coming into existence during this early era of the Earth, but I don't necessarily know what was going on during this period, so I can't really tie in the literal meaning like I could with the different subdivisions or the different layers of the ocean. I could understand that part on a literal level. So, trying to look at this metaphorically, though, I'm still kind of lost too. There's an interesting idea here that says our dreams now soaring above the surface with horizons shifting slow in blue. And I don't know if it's because of the ocean or if it's because the idea that fish came out of the ocean and evolved and grew legs and lungs and all that stuff. But I kind of like start out with this idea like, hey, nascent, the first existence of the land walkers, all right? These fish swimming around and they dream of what's above the surface of the water. And I really thought I was onto something here, and nothing else really works towards that. So I think whatever, like the surface read of this Devonian era kind of idea, I don't think I got it. Um, there are some ideas about, I don't know, it's like the chorus is a song that remains unsung, a chain around my neck, thrusting on my back, this violent storm ahead of time never spent. Nascent. It feels like being held back. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting from it. Being held back from one's own existence, or you know, hurdles being presented that uh, don't allow somebody to fully realize themselves is kind of the vibe I'm getting here. And like this can kind of go back towards evolution, becoming that next form. But I feel like I'm grasping at straws here. Because there's a lot of stuff that just, like one of the lines is took, oh, wait, the idea of being held back though kind of works with that 3-5 idea. And 3-5 evolving into 3-3-2, and getting more rapid, increasing the pressure, the drive to move past the surface, to break through from the chains that hold us back. I don't know. I I definitely feel less sure of these ideas that I present when I don't feel like I have a firm grasp on the lyrics. But I do wonder if any of this does come together. Maybe this is a album I'm gonna have to dig into as a whole. Because, like I said, I'm missing some stuff, right? I don't know really what the metaphorical side of this could be because I don't know the theme of the album. I don't know what's come before it. Like I said, if you had thrust me into the middle of paleo, why can't I think of that? Pelagial. I don't know that I would have ever understood it was talking about diving into one's mind and, viewing our actions through the lens of the id and the superego, because I would be missing a lot of the concepts that set that up, a lot of the lyrical metaphors that would set up that idea to put the listener in that mindset. Being that this is the fifth track of the album, they assume that you've already caught on to the themes. They've made them uh, more readable at the beginning of the album, most likely, to put you in the mindset so that you can have the correct angle to view these words from. And I have skipped that area. I have skipped the glossary, so to speak, and I've just dove right into the words, and I don't understand them. I think that's where I'm at. So, I suppose let me know in the comments if I'm even close. Like, I feel like if I am, I'm just scratching the surface. Like maybe let me know if I'm on the right path here, I suppose is a better way of saying that. And if you want to kind of clue me into what's going on here, I will fully accept that as well. I do plan on diving into this album eventually. I really dug Pelagial, and I really enjoyed what they're doing here, specifically with, again, their clean elements, which I think is just a really cool side of the ocean I haven't heard yet. So, kind of having a head start when I get to this album, knowing at least what it's about, surface level or even metaphorically, um, I would take that. I would take that little help before getting into this because the ocean, the ocean's deep. This is where you guys come in. I'm sorry, that was bad. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what's going on. If you enjoyed this or not, anything you want to add to the conversation, anything I touched on you want to add to, or anything that I missed, you want to let me know what's going on, I'm down for that. I always read all the comments, so let me know. Above the comment section, if you could like, subscribe, and ring the bell, I greatly appreciate all three of those. And in the description box is a link for Linktree. It'll take you to this menu right here. It has everything related to the channel in it. You can pick up some merch, join the Patreon, join the Discord, follow me on Twitter. There's a bunch of stuff in there. Go ahead and check it out. All right, that wraps it up for this one. 15 minutes ago, our special selection came out. Should I push these off? Instead of 5 and 5:30 Eastern Standard, should they be 5 and 6 now that they're really pushing an hour each? How do I think about that? That way I stop saying, a little bit ago, this other one came out. Makes it really hard to be the first viewer if you're a devoted fan watching every video. It's impossible to be first on the special selections because you're checking out the themed one. Maybe I'll do that next week. Yeah, we'll go through regular this week. Next week I'll introduce the new release schedule. You know what? I'll put a poll up for it. Check out the YouTube community posts. I think I can do polls in there. I'll do a poll on Twitter. I'll do a poll on Discord. Like, I'll make sure that everyone in the community has an opportunity to weigh in on this. See how that goes. All right. Anyways, 5:30 Eastern Standard Time, which was like 17 minutes ago. Our second one dropped. It is a band called UFO. I don't really have any more information than that, so that's going to be interesting. I don't know what we're getting into. Otherwise, if that doesn't sound interesting to you, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. We'll be moving on with this week's theme of collaboration and checking out another special selection. Until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.